looking at our next example, what we're going to be doing is, I think the first great step that you should do is you should identify your coefficient a is equal to -2. Now, when a is equal to -2, this actually implies two transformations. The coefficient of interest here is a. So if a is -2, this means two things. It implies two transformations. Since a is negative, we have to reflect. But also, the absolute value of -2, pardon me, I should write that maybe a little bit better. The absolute value of -2 is 2. So the coefficient of interest is a. Specifically, a is equal to -2. Since a is negative, what we're going to do is we're going to reflect about x-axis. Since the absolute value of a is 2, what we're going to do is we are going to stretch by a factor of 2. So I have identified my two transformations. So I'm going to write, this is f of x, and I'm just going to write f of x in black. So f of x. And after I reflect f of x is equal to x squared. And then after I do that, after I reflect it, it becomes another function, maybe y is equal to -x squared. And I can do that, and I can reflect it. There we are. We've done this before, I feel. So there are my points, and I'm just going to graph them like that. That's the reflected graph. And so this is the making my a negative. Stretching by a factor of 2 now changes the equation y is equal to -2x squared. And from my point form, so now I'm on from the black graph, and I need to stretch it by a factor of 2. I simply multiply the y values by 2. So point f of x is equal to x squared start off with point xy. When we reflected those points, they changed to point x comma -y. When we stretched the black graph by a factor of 2, we changed the y points and we simply multiply by 2. So we always build from the last transformation, and if we multiply the y values, which were -y, by 2, they change into -2y. So if I do that, this is the graph that I end up with. So for instance, my y value was, or my point was -1, 1, becomes -1, -2. This point here, -2, 4, now turns into -2, 8. So the mathematical operations, so for the reflection, it was multiply y values by -1. The blue one was my stretch. And I'm just going to say I would multiply my y values by the absolute value of -2, which was 2. So I just multiplied my y values by 2.